Hi, I'm Ross Rosenberg. Welcome to my latest YouTube video and podcast. Today I want to talk to you about a movie called Together. It's a movie that was just released a couple weeks ago. It is a horror film that stars Dave DeFranco and Alison Brie. Even though I will not be providing a movie review, I'd like to say a few things about the movie before I jump right into the topic about enmeshment and the loss of one's identity. The movie is about a couple, an imperfect couple. The girl, the woman, Millie, and the boyfriend, Tim. Millie wants a long-term relationship. She really loves Tim. She imagines herself being married to Tim. Tim, apparently, as far as you can tell, loves Millie and feels very connected to her, but he's more brooding. He's stuck in his own dark thoughts. There's hints of mental illness or trauma in his background, a little foreshadowing, and just seems to be preoccupied. But Millie, she's ready. In fact, early in the movie, at a party, she gets on her knees and proposes to Tim. It could have been a sweet moment, but Tim freezes. Because remember, he's dark and brooding. He doesn't quite know what he wants out of his life. And that caught him off guard. It starts off with this feeling that, well, Millie really really loves this guy. And Tim, he's relationship ambivalent. And you don't know really where it's going. But it's set up where they eventually fall into this big cavernous hole in the forest. And they don't really know where it is, but apparently, at least they find out later, it was once a church run by a minister or a preacher of some sort of cult leader that proposes that people come together and become one person. Well, you don't really know too much about that in the beginning of the movie, other than when Tim falls into this cavernous hole and walking around trying to figure out what is this place. Well, he's thirsty and he drinks water from a pond. Well, of course, you don't do that, especially in a horror film. And after they get out, try to make sense of what that place was, and they really can't figure it out. But Tim starts to transform. You can tell he's getting sick. Something is happening to him. He is not feeling himself. He's moody. He's angry. He's more distant. Millie, on the other hand, well, she's madly in love with him. And she really wants to get closer to Tim. And Tim normally, pushes away. Eventually, they run into their neighbor. His name is Jamie, who happens to work with Millie. They're both teachers. And this Jamie guy introduces the idea, the story of a church once existing in the forest where people would come together and become one unified person. And he promotes this idea as a positive idea, a beautiful idea, something that is heavenly, something that is so sweet. But the moviegoer doesn't really know what's going on yet. As time goes on, Tim gets sicker, and all of a sudden, it starts to affect Millie. Millie apparently either caught this virus or whatever it is that's infecting Tim, because she starts to behave strangely. But a very interesting phenomenon happens. Start to stick together. Yeah, it sounds strange, but yes, when their skin touches, it's not only sticks together, but there's this process that pulls both of their bodies together to form one body. As their skin sticks together, at least in the beginning of the movie, they pull away and they, are surprised and they don't know what's happening. Why is this stickiness happening to them? Even in one scene, and this is a very disturbing scene, when Tim and Millie get lost in a passionate moment in a bathroom stall in Millie's school, they get stuck together. In this very intimate moment, at the conclusion of it, they cannot separate. Now that is a very, very weird moment in the movie. It was very upsetting. Not only are you watching these two people who just made love, now in the throes of passion, they can't separate. And as much as they try to pull apart, it seems that they can't. And finally they can. And both of them are in great pain because of it. In fact, you could even see blood streaming down Millie's leg afterwards. If you feel stuck in painful relationship patterns, you're not alone. I've already helped thousands of people break free from what I call self-love deficit disorder. Choose self-love over the insanity of narcissistic abuse. Work with me. My psychotherapy can help. So at this part of the movie, you're kind of going, what the heck's going on here? There's this force, this supernatural force that brings them together. And when they touch, not only can't pull apart, but it starts to create even stronger bonds. So after that scene, things kind of go downhill. And there's a scene where they're actually holding hands, and you could actually see the body parts molding together, kind of like folding into one. And they fight it, and they fight it, and they fight it, and eventually they break free. I am skipping over a lot of this movie. It's a complicated movie. It's a scary movie. It's a grotesque movie, because in this movie, it's very frightening. They don't know what's happening to themselves, and therefore they are fighting it. And it's almost like this flu that is getting worse and worse over time. And as it gets worse, the moments when they do contact, the moments that they become enmeshed physically and start to mold into each other becomes even more difficult. It rises to a crescendo, even at a point where they take this saw, which was foreshadowed in the beginning of the movie, to actually cut themselves apart. Yeah, it's really gross, and it's a definite spoiler, so sorry if I ruined that part of the movie. But eventually, they realize that they came across this cult, this church, that practiced dysfunctional magic of sorts, where people come together and they meld into one another to a person, one person that combines their identity, and they are just one person without two egos, without two personalities. And according to the neighbor, Jamie, who we find out is one of these melded together people, that it is this wonderful experience that is transcendent. But to the moviegoer, it is freaky and it's scary. But what I want to talk about is this concept of moving into one person in a relationship and losing your identity. And it fits very closely with this concept I created called relationship math. And it's based upon a very simple mathematical equation. A half and a half equals one, and one is a half of a relationship. The half of a person, a codependent, and the other half of a person, a pathological narcissist. Each of these individuals, they don't feel complete in their life. They feel lost. Feel like they just don't know what happiness is. They can't relax. They're just burdened by this deep sense of pathological loneliness and core shame. And it's only in a relationship can they get out of this. Can they escape it? Can they experience what feels like joy, feels like love? It is this euphoric, can't sleep, can't eat, walking on air phenomenon. We call that limerence, is what happens when two people meet each other and they fall in love. But for the codependent and the narcissist, they never individuated. They never found this form of ego development where they learned that they are whole by themselves. They love themselves, that they know how to take care of themselves. They are pursuing their life in an adult, mature, honest, self-enhancing manner. Instead, they are craving the company of another person to take their pain away. So the half of a person of the codependent meets the half of the person of the narcissist. And for that brief moment of time, sometimes it's a week, sometimes it's longer, they both feel absolutely euphoric and they feel like they found their soulmate. Analogous to the movie Together, that is the relationship coming together and being one person. They lose their individuality. They don't know what it's like to be alone anymore because that represents pain, that represents suffering that comes from the trauma they experienced as children. Codependents and pathological narcissists come from families in which they were raised by narcissists. And of course, if you follow my human magnet syndrome theory, that means the other parent is a codependent. And the codependent found a way in their childhood to cope with the narcissist's conditional love. They found a way to mold themselves to be what the narcissist parent wanted them, or to avoid being what the narcissist most hates and what their child could be. So they grew up into an adult that serves other people, that takes care of other people, that sacrifices, and never really knows what's good for themselves. Self-love deficient. That child never figured out how to please the parent. That child was a target for the narcissist's hatred, narcissistic injuries, was constantly upsetting the narcissist. So that child's trauma was far more severe than the child who would become an adult codependent. They never learned that they could find any identity. They never learned they could find acceptance. They always were the outcast, and they always were suffering because of it. Because of the human magnet syndrome, the codependent is attracted to the opposite narcissist, and these two forces bring them together. They feel this strong surge, this urge to come together and to escape their pain. It's almost like in the movie Together, they become one person. They lose their sense of individuality. They feel this sense of euphoria, but really it's just an analgesic. It is a pain reliever. It is nothing more than just an escape from their trauma history. And codependents and narcissists become one person. But in this horror film, which is reality for codependents, it's not that the codependent and the narcissist become one person. The codependent is subsumed within the narcissist and has to take on everything about the narcissist, has to become what the narcissist wants, has to not be what the narcissist dislikes. They sacrifice their reality. They sacrifice their happiness. They sacrifice their sense of separateness and individuality. They are sucked into the narcissist world. And so when I watched that movie, I thought about how the codependent becomes one with the narcissist, believing it will bring them happiness, believing it will answer their prayers of finding this soulmate that will take away their sadness and their loneliness, this pervasive feeling of core shame. But as they become one with the narcissist, that's the true living horror movie. You become one with a person who doesn't really care. You get lost in their world. Your own identity cannot survive alongside the narcissist. And yes, it's not a horror film. And no, it doesn't end with two people dying, but it's a form of psychic death, psychological death, emotional death. It's a very, very sad story. The relationship math that people practice who are patients of mine, who are clients of mine, who are clients of my self-love recovery treatment program, reflects the addition of two whole people who are individuated, who are self-love abundant. They come together as whole, self-loving people to find this relationship and enjoy the connection, the love, the togetherness. Yes, they come together and they give up a little bit of their independence, but they don't lose their individuality. Their egos are not subsumed into one another. So 1 + 1 = 2, and 2 is a full relationship. Someone who's self-love abundant and another person who's self-love abundant equals a full relationship. So when you watch this movie, if you do, yes, it might scare you, but I want you to consider that if you're a codependent or someone who is self-love deficient and you have a history of falling in love with pathological narcissists, I want you to consider that this horror film is reflective of your own life, of being pulled into another person and losing yourself and becoming this one unified relationship, becoming this person who has to be more like the narcissist, or should they try to be independent, should they assert their independence, will be seen as a threat and will be pushed down, will be ridiculed, will be abused, will be manipulated until they succumb and let go and allow themselves to mold into that narcissist fantasy one-person relationship. So I hope that you see this movie. It's a good movie. I highly recommend it. It's one of the best horror films I've seen in a while, and I'm not a big fan of horror films. It's well made, it's well acted, the plot development is interesting. Everything about it is really cool. But if you do see it, consider, if you're an SLD, you're a codependent, that this is the sacrifice that is made for the narcissist who gets everything that they want. In the words of the character Jamie, when he talks about the beauty and the fulfillment that it creates when two people come together, well, those are the words of the narcissist. The narcissist gets everything from this enmeshed process, this process of coming together. And you, the SLD, you, the codependent, lose everything. If you can relate to this and you would like help, well, consider giving me a call. I'm a psychotherapist. I provide a very unique treatment program that I developed called a self-love recovery treatment program. And I help SLDs, people who are self-love deficient, who are codependent, to learn to be whole by themselves, to heal from the trauma that is responsible for their lifetime filled with sacrifice. If you would like more information, just check out Self-Love Recovery Institute or shoot us an email at help@selfloverecovery.com. Thank you for coming by and listening, and you be well and you take care. If you feel stuck in painful relationship patterns, you're not alone. I've already helped thousands of people break free from what I call self-love deficit disorder. Choose self-love over the insanity of narcissistic abuse. Work with me. My psychotherapy can help.